Marcus Chen stood alone in the fluorescent wash of Bangkok's Suvarnabhumi airport at 2 in the morning, his phone screen casting a pale blue glow across his face. The message was still there, unchanged no matter how many times he read it. Just 3 words from Aria, "I'm sorry." Around him, the terminal hummed with the ambient noise of a place that never truly sleeps. Cleaning crews pushed wide mops across polished floors. A family of tourists slumped against their luggage, the children sleeping with their heads on backpacks. Departure boards flickered with destinations Marcus couldn't pronounce. He'd imagined this airport differently 6 months ago when he'd first started planning this trip. In those daydreams, Aria would be waiting at arrivals, her smile bright against the crowd, maybe holding one of those handwritten welcome signs he'd seen in romantic comedies. She'd told him once during a video call that Thai people loved small gestures like that. He believed her. He believed everything. 6 months earlier, Marcus had been sitting in his Seattle apartment on a Thursday night, the remains of pad thai congealing in its takeout container on the coffee table beside him. His television played a show he wasn't watching. Outside his window, the Space Needle stood illuminated against the dark sky, a landmark he'd stopped noticing years ago. He was 34 years old, a senior software developer at a mid-sized tech company, and he earned a comfortable living writing code that helped optimize supply chain logistics for e-commerce platforms. His apartment was clean in the way that single men's apartments are clean when they've given up trying to impress anyone. Functional. Neutral. A place to sleep between the rhythms of work. He'd been scrolling through his phone, thumb moving automatically across the screen of a dating app he'd downloaded and deleted at least a dozen times over the past 2 years. The women in Seattle all seemed to blur together after a while. The same hiking photos, the same jokes about loving tacos and hating small talk. He'd been on enough first dates to know the script by heart. Coffee at a carefully chosen, neutral location. Conversation that felt like a job interview disguised as getting to know someone. The inevitable text a day or 2 later saying they hadn't felt a spark but wishing him well. He'd sent that same text himself more times than he could count. That night, he'd switched to a different app, one that promised international connections. He told himself he was just curious, just browsing, the same way people scroll through real estate listings for homes they'll never buy. That's when he saw her. Aria. Her profile showed a woman with long dark hair and eyes that seemed genuinely happy, not performing happiness for the camera. She was photographed at what looked like a night market, colorful lanterns glowing behind her, mid-laugh at something outside the frame. Her bio was simple. Teacher in Bangkok, love cooking, reading, and finding quiet moments in loud places. Looking for someone genuine, Marcus almost scrolled past. What were the chances someone like her would match with someone like him? But something made him pause. Maybe it was the way she'd written genuine without any irony or cynicism. Maybe it was the fact that she wasn't making demands in her bio, no lists of requirements or deal breakers. He swiped right, expecting nothing, and went back to his cooling pad thai. The notification came the next morning while he was brewing coffee before work. They'd matched. His heart did something stupid and hopeful in his chest. He opened the app and stared at the blank message field for longer than he wanted to admit. What do you say to someone on the other side of the world? He settled on something simple. Hi, Aria. I'm Marcus. I loved your profile. What was making you laugh in that photo? Her response came during his lunch break, and he found himself checking his phone every few minutes that afternoon, something he never did. She wrote in clear English with just enough small imperfections to remind him this wasn't her first language, which somehow made it more endearing. Hi, Marcus. Thank you for message. That photo is from weekend market near my apartment. My friend tell very bad joke about durian fruit. You know durian, very smelly, but some people love it. I think she compared it to her ex-boyfriend. We laugh so much. How is Seattle? I never been to America. That first exchange stretched into a conversation that lasted 3 days, messages appearing throughout the day as their opposite time zones created a rhythm. When he was having morning coffee, she was eating dinner. When he was leaving work, she was starting her day at the school where she taught English to elementary students. She sent him photos of her classroom, colorful alphabet posters on the walls, and tiny chairs arranged in careful rows. He sent her a photo of the Seattle skyline from his office window, the gray clouds that were so constant he barely noticed them anymore. After a week, she suggested a video call. Marcus spent 20 minutes cleaning his apartment before the scheduled time, angling his laptop so the camera wouldn't catch the pile of unfolded laundry on his bed. When her face appeared on screen, he felt something shift in his chest. She was real. Not just real in the sense of existing, but real in the way she tucked her hair behind her ear when she was thinking, the way her eyes crinkled when she smiled, The way she said his name with a soft emphasis on the first syllable that made it sound like someone else's name, someone more interesting than he'd ever thought himself to be. They talked for 2 hours that first night. She asked about his work and actually seemed interested when he tried to explain what he did, even though he was used to people's eyes glazing over when he mentioned code optimization. She told him about her students, about the little boy who brought her flowers from his mother's garden every Monday, about the girl who was so shy she whispered every answer but got perfect scores on every test. She talked about her dream of one day opening a small cafe, nothing fancy, just a place where people could sit and read and drink good coffee, somewhere quiet in a city that was never quiet. Marcus asked about her family. She paused, and he saw something flicker across her face. Her parents had died in a car accident when she was 19, she said. She lived with her grandmother now, helped take care of her. Her younger sister was studying at university in Chiang Mai. The weight of responsibility was clear in the way she spoke about it. Not with resentment, but with the quiet acceptance of someone who'd never had the luxury of choosing otherwise. Over the next 3 months, their video calls became the architecture of Marcus's life. He started leaving work exactly at 5, something he'd never done before, so he could be home in time to talk to her during her lunch break. He learned to read her moods in the small details. When she was tired, she'd rest her chin in her hand. When she was excited about something, she'd lean closer to the camera. When she was worried, she'd bite her lower lip without realizing it. She told him about her grandmother's health declining, the medical bills that were mounting. Marcus found himself wanting to help, wanting to be useful to her in some tangible way. When he offered to send money, she refused at first, said she couldn't accept that from him. But he insisted. It was $3,000, a significant amount, but not devastating to his savings. She cried when he sent it, told him he was too kind, that she didn't deserve someone like him. He felt like a hero in that moment, felt like maybe for the first time in his careful, predictable life, he was doing something that mattered to someone. His brother Daniel noticed the change in him. They met for their usual Sunday brunch at a diner in Capitol Hill, and Marcus couldn't stop checking his phone. Aria had sent him a video of the street food market near her apartment, narrating as she walked through the stalls, showing him grilled meats and fresh fruit and vendors calling out prices in Thai. He watched it twice while Daniel ordered. "You're seeing someone," Daniel said. It wasn't a question. Marcus looked up from his phone. "Kind of. It's complicated." "Complicated how?" "She lives in Thailand." Daniel set down his coffee. "Thailand. You're dating someone in Thailand, someone you've never met. We video call every day. I know her. You know what she shows you on a screen." Daniel had always been the practical one, the older brother who'd settled into marriage and mortgage payments and a job in pharmaceutical sales that he neither loved nor hated. "Marcus, you're a smart guy. You have to know how this sounds. It's not a scam if that's what you're implying." "I'm not implying anything. I'm just saying be careful. People can be anyone online." But Marcus didn't want to be careful. Careful had gotten him nowhere but a clean apartment and a savings account and a life that felt like watching someone else's life through a window. Aria made him feel seen in a way no one ever had. She remembered that he didn't like cilantro. She asked about his mother's health when his mom had a minor surgery. She sent him photos of sunsets from her apartment balcony with messages saying she wished he could see them in person. So when she mentioned, almost casually during a call in early spring, that she wished he could visit Bangkok, that there was so much she wanted to show him, Marcus felt something crystallize in his chest. Why not? He had vacation days accumulated. He had savings. He had nothing tethering him to Seattle except a job that would still be there when he got back, and an apartment that would wait, patient and empty, for his return. He booked the ticket that night. 2 weeks in Bangkok. He told Aria the next day, and her face on the screen transformed into something luminous. She couldn't believe it. She was already planning everywhere they'd go, everything they'd do. He'd stay at a hotel, she said, because she shared a small apartment with her sister, and it wouldn't be appropriate, but they'd spend every day together. She'd take time off from school. She wanted this to be perfect. The weeks before the trip passed in a blur of anticipation. Marcus bought new clothes, read guidebooks about Bangkok, practiced a few basic Thai phrases using a language app. His coworkers noticed his improved mood. Even his code reviews became less critical, more generous. He was transforming into a version of himself he'd always suspected might exist beneath the careful, risk-averse exterior. Daniel tried one more time the week before Marcus left. They were helping their mother clear out the garage, a project she'd been threatening to do for years. While their mother was inside making lemonade, Daniel cornered Marcus by the boxes of old Christmas decorations. "I'm worried about you," Daniel said. "Don't be. I'm fine. I'm better than fine. You sent her money. She needed help." Her grandmother was sick. And you verified this. How? Marcus felt anger flash hot in his chest. Why can't you just be happy for me? For once in my life, I'm taking a chance on something. Taking chances is great. Getting scammed by someone you've never met is not taking a chance. It's being naive. They didn't speak for the rest of the afternoon. Marcus left early, drove home through Seattle traffic that felt heavier than usual, and found a message from Aria waiting. She'd sent a voice note, her voice soft and excited. Only one more week, Marcus. I cannot wait to meet you in person, to show you my city, to show you everything. He played it 3 times, and each time Daniel's warnings receded a little further. The night before his flight, Marcus couldn't sleep. He lay in bed, his packed suitcase standing by the door like a sentinel. His laptop was open on the nightstand, displaying his boarding pass and hotel confirmation. Everything was ready. Everything was finally happening. He thought about Aria waiting for him on the other side of the world. Thought about her smile and her voice and the way she made him feel like he mattered. Tomorrow he'd board a plane and cross an ocean and step into the life he was meant to be living all along. He had no idea that in exactly 10 days, he'd be standing in this same airport, holding his phone with a 3-word message that would shatter everything he thought he knew. But that was 10 days away. Tonight, Marcus Chen was happy. Tonight, he was a man in love, flying toward his future. He fell asleep just before dawn, dreaming of Bangkok and a woman who'd made him believe in possibilities again. The first thing Marcus noticed when he walked through the arrivals gate at Suvarnabhumi Airport was the heat. Even inside the air-conditioned terminal, he could feel it pressing against the glass walls, waiting. The second thing he noticed was Aria. She was standing near the barrier where drivers held signs for hotel guests and tour groups, and she was holding a piece of white paper with his name written in careful letters, small hearts drawn in each corner. She wore a simple blue dress, and her hair was pulled back, and when she saw him, her whole face transformed with a smile that made the 20-hour journey feel like nothing at all. "Marcus," she said, and hearing his name in her voice, in person, after months of screens and speakers, made something in his chest contract. They hugged awkwardly at first, the strange intimacy of holding someone you know deeply but have never touched. She smelled like jasmine and something else he couldn't identify, something that would forever after remind him of this moment. "You're really here," she said, pulling back to look at him, her hands still on his arms. "I'm really here." She insisted on helping him with his luggage, even though he told her it was fine. They took a taxi into the city, and Marcus pressed his face to the window like a child, watching Bangkok unfold in the afternoon light. The highways were dense with traffic, motorcycles weaving between cars with a fluidity that seemed impossible. Billboards in Thai script towered over the roads. In the distance, he could see the golden spires of temples rising above the urban sprawl. Aria sat close to him in the back seat, her hand resting near his, not quite touching but close enough that he could feel the warmth of her skin. She'd booked him a hotel in Sukhumvit, a mid-range place that was nicer than he'd expected. The lobby had polished marble floors and staff in crisp uniforms who greeted him in English. Aria waited while he checked in, and when he suggested she come up to see the room, she shook her head with a shy smile. "Not appropriate," she said. "In Thailand, we take these things slowly. I want to do this right with you." He respected that. He admired it even. It felt old-fashioned in a way that made him trust her more. They spent the rest of that first day walking through the neighborhood. She took him to a street food market where vendors sold grilled meats on skewers and sumtam from carts, the spicy papaya salad she'd told him about during their video calls. She ordered for him, navigating the Thai rapid fire while he stood beside her, feeling pleasantly out of his depth. They ate standing up, plastic forks and small plates balanced in their hands, and the food was exactly as she'd described it. Bright, complex, alive in a way that Seattle food never seemed to be. That night they had dinner at a restaurant overlooking the Chao Phraya River, the water dark and moving beneath them, lights from the opposite bank reflecting in broken patterns on the surface. Aria talked about her students, told him stories that made him laugh, and he found himself thinking that this was exactly what he'd hoped for. Connection, ease. The sense that he'd finally found someone who saw him clearly and liked what she saw. When he walked her to the taxi stand afterward, she kissed him on the cheek, her lips soft and brief against his skin. "Tomorrow I show you the real Bangkok," she said. "The places tourists never see." He floated back to his hotel room, jet-lagged and happy and certain that he'd made the right choice. The next 3 days were exactly what she'd promised. She took him to Wat Pho before the crowds arrived, the massive reclining Buddha golden in the early morning light. She knew a vendor there who sold coffee from a cart, and they drank it sitting on the temple steps while monks in orange robes walked past. She brought him to neighborhoods he'd never heard of, Small streets where old women sold flowers and children played soccer with a ball made of rubber bands. She introduced him to her friend Ploy, a cheerful woman in her early 30s who worked at a spa in Thong Lo and spoke excellent English. Ploy hugged him like they were already family, told him he was lucky to have found Aria, that she was one of the good ones. Everything felt right, real, exactly as it should be. On the fourth day, things shifted. They were having lunch at a quiet restaurant in Aria, one of those places with no English menu and only a handful of tables. Aria had been quieter that morning, and Marcus had attributed it to tiredness. But as they waited for their food, she reached across the table and took his hand. "I need to tell you something," she said. His stomach tightened. "Okay, I have been thinking about us, about our future." She looked down at their joined hands. "I want to be honest with you about something. My uncle, he has business opportunity, real estate investment in Phuket. Very good opportunity, closing very soon." Marcus nodded slowly. "Okay. In Thailand, foreigner cannot buy property directly. It's the law. But if we are serious, if you and I are building future together, we could purchase together. In my name for legal reason, but for both of us. My uncle show me numbers. We could run it as vacation rental. The money would be enough that I could quit teaching, focus on my cafe dream. We could build something real together." There it was, the ask. Marcus felt something cold settle in his stomach even as Aria's eyes searched his face with what looked like genuine hope. "That's a big step," he said carefully. I know it is," she squeezed his hand. "I don't want to pressure you. If you don't trust me yet, I understand. We only just meet in person. But Marcus, I feel like I know you. These months talking, I feel closer to you than anyone. I just want you to know about opportunity, in case you want to be part of it." She didn't push further. When the food came, she changed the subject, asked about his hotel, whether the air conditioning was working properly, whether he'd tried the breakfast buffet. Her tone was light, easy, as if she hadn't just asked him to invest in property on the other side of the world with someone he'd known in person for 3 days. That night, alone in his hotel room, Marcus lay awake staring at the ceiling. The air conditioner hummed steadily. Outside his window, Bangkok's lights stretched endlessly. He thought about Daniel's warnings. He thought about every article he'd ever read about romance scams and too good to be true opportunities. But he also thought about Aria's hand in his, the way she looked at him, the 3 months of daily conversations and the grandmother's medical bills he'd helped with. Real people had real problems. Real opportunities existed, not everything was a scam. He picked up his phone and scrolled through their message history, hundreds of conversations stretching back months, the photos she'd sent, the voice notes, the video calls where he'd seen her apartment in the background, her bookshelves and the window overlooking the street. She'd never once asked him for money beyond that one time for her grandmother, and she'd been reluctant even then. This was different. This was an investment, a partnership, a sign that she saw him as part of her future. By morning, he'd made his decision. Aria arranged for him to meet her uncle the next afternoon at a cafe in Silom, one of those upscale places with carefully curated industrial decor and coffee that cost as much as a meal. Somchai arrived exactly on time, a distinguished man in his late 50s with graying hair and expensive glasses. He greeted Marcus with a firm handshake and spoke English with a British accent that suggested education abroad. "Aria has told me so much about you," Somchai said as they settled into a corner table. "She's very happy. I haven't seen her this happy since before her parents died." He ordered them coffee and then pulled out an iPad, swiping through documents with the casual confidence of someone who did this regularly. The property was a 2-bedroom villa in Phuket, walking distance from Kata Beach. The current owners were motivated to sell quickly because they were relocating to Singapore. Market value was around 7 million baht, but they could get it for 6 million if they moved fast. That was roughly $45,000. Somchai showed him photos. The villa was beautiful. All white walls and modern fixtures. A small pool in the courtyard. He showed projected rental income based on similar properties in the area. Conservative estimates put annual revenue at around $20,000 after management fees and maintenance. Within 3 years, they'd recoup the investment and be generating pure profit. "Of course, you understand the legal situation," Somchai said. "Foreigners can own the building but not the land beneath. However, with Aria as Thai national, she can hold the land title. You would be business partners. I've prepared partnership agreement that protects both parties." He swiped to a document, pages of legal text in both Thai and English. Marcus scanned it, but the language was dense and technical, full of clauses and subclauses that would require careful reading. "I can give you a copy to review," Somchai said. "Take your time, but decision must be made by end of week. Sellers have other interested parties. Marcus looked at Aria. She was watching him with an expression he couldn't quite read. Hope, maybe. Or nervousness. She gave him a small smile. No pressure, she said softly. Only if you want to. That evening, Marcus sat in his hotel room with the contract on his laptop screen and his banking app open on his phone. $45,000. It was nearly everything he had in savings. The careful accumulation of years of steady paychecks and frugal living. But what was he saving for, really? A future that looked exactly like his present? A retirement decades away? This was a chance to build something real, to take a risk on a person and a dream and a life that felt bigger than the careful boundaries he'd drawn around himself. He thought about calling Daniel. He even opened the contact, his thumb hovering over the call button. But he knew what Daniel would say. He knew the lectures about due diligence and background checks and never mixing romance with finance. Daniel had never taken a real risk in his life. Daniel had never felt what Marcus felt when Aria looked at him. Marcus transferred the money. Aria cried when he told her, real tears that she wiped away with the back of her hand, her mascara smudging slightly. They were in a park in Lumpini, walking around the lake where people jogged and did Tai Chi in the fading afternoon light. You won't regret this, she said, her voice thick with emotion. I promise you, Marcus, we're going to build something beautiful together. She kissed him then, properly kissed him for the first time, and he felt like he was floating. This was the moment his life had been building toward. This was the reward for taking the chance, for being brave enough to trust. The next 2 days were perfect. They visited the Grand Palace and took a boat through the canals of Thonburi, the traditional wooden houses on stilts rising from the water's edge. They had dinner at a rooftop restaurant where Bangkok sprawled beneath them in a carpet of lights. Aria was attentive and warm and everything he'd hoped for. She talked about their future, about the cafe she'd open once the rental income was steady, about how he could work remotely and split his time between Seattle and Bangkok. She painted a picture that felt so real he could almost touch it. But then small things began to shift. On day 8, she canceled their planned trip to Ayutthaya. She said something had come up with the property paperwork, that Samchai needed her to sign documents at the land office. She seemed stressed, distracted. That evening when they met for dinner, she was on her phone more than usual, typing quick messages in Thai and then putting the phone face down on the table. Everything okay? Marcus asked. Fine. Just some complications with the title transfer. Normal things. Don't worry. But he was starting to worry. He tried calling Ploy, the friend from the spa, thinking maybe she could give him some reassurance about how property deals worked in Thailand. His messages showed as delivered, but never read. On day 9, Aria was 2 hours late to meet him. When she finally arrived at the cafe where he'd been waiting, she looked exhausted, her eyes red. I'm sorry, she said. Family issue, my grandmother. Is she okay? Do you need anything? She's fine. Just stress. Aria reached for his hand across the table, but the gesture felt mechanical, obligatory. Can we skip dinner tonight? I need to go home, take care of some things. Of course. Do you want me to come with you? Her face tightened. No, I told you, I share an apartment with my sister. It's not appropriate yet. Aria, we just invested in property together. I think I can meet your sister. Why don't you trust me? Her voice rose slightly, drawing looks from nearby tables. I tell you I need to handle family business and you question me? You think I'm hiding something? Marcus felt like he'd been slapped. No, I didn't mean. I thought you were different. I thought you understood me. She stood up, grabbing her bag. Maybe this was a mistake. Maybe you are like every other foreign man who think Thai women are lying to them. She left before he could respond, disappearing into the crowded street. Marcus sat alone at the table, his coffee growing cold, feeling like the world had tilted on its axis. That night, he sent her a dozen messages apologizing, saying he trusted her, that he was just worried about her. She didn't respond until the next morning, a brief text saying she forgave him but needed space to think. On day 10, Marcus made a decision. He looked up the address Aria had mentioned once in passing, early in their conversations when she'd told him about the view from her balcony. He took a taxi there, his heart pounding. Maybe he was being paranoid. Maybe he'd find her apartment and everything would make sense, and he could apologize properly for doubting her. The address led to a building in a tired neighborhood far from the polished areas they'd been visiting. Paint peeled from the concrete walls. Laundry hung from balconies on fraying rope. Marcus checked the apartment number she'd mentioned. The door was answered by an elderly man who spoke no English. Marcus showed him Aria's photo on his phone. The man shook his head, gestured around as if to indicate she'd never lived there. Marcus's hands were shaking as he walked back down the stairs. He tried calling Aria. Straight to voicemail. He called again. Voicemail. He sent messages that showed as delivered but not read. Back at his hotel, Marcus discovered his room had been entered. The door was properly locked, no sign of forced entry, but he knew immediately. His laptop was gone. The one with all his files, all their chat histories, all the property documents. His backup hard drive was missing. The hotel security footage showed a woman entering his room using a keycard around noon. The footage was grainy, but she looked enough like Aria that Marcus felt sick. He spent the rest of the day at the tourist police station, a place that felt surreal in its bureaucratic normality. The officer handling his case was a tired-looking man who listened to Marcus's story with an expression that suggested he'd heard variations of it many times before. "You have copy of property documents?" the officer asked. "They were on my laptop." "You meet this uncle in person?" "Yes, at a cafe." "You get his ID card? Business card?" Marcus realized he hadn't. He'd shaken Somchai's hand and accepted his explanations and never asked for verification of anything. The officer sighed. "Mr. Chen, I'm sorry to tell you, but this is common scam. Romance scam combined with property fraud. Very sophisticated. They work in networks. The woman, the uncle, the friend, all part of same operation." Marcus felt the room spin. "But we talked for months. I saw her every day on video calls. I saw her apartment. You saw what they wanted you to see. Rented space, maybe. Or real apartment they have access to. These people are professional. They study you, learn what you want to hear, give you exactly that." Marcus tried to speak but couldn't find words. The officer continued, his voice not unkind. "We will investigate, but you should prepare for possibility you won't recover money. These networks are very good at disappearing. The woman you knew as Aria, probably not her real name. The uncle, the friend, all actors." That night, Marcus couldn't stay in the hotel room. He walked through Bangkok's streets. The city that hours ago had seemed magical now felt hostile and foreign. He ended up at the airport around midnight, checked out of his hotel early, and booked the first flight he could get back to Seattle. He sat in the departure area, watching people come and go, families reuniting, and couples kissing goodbye, and he felt more alone than he'd ever felt in his life. At 2 a.m, his phone buzzed. A message from Aria, just 3 words that somehow contained everything. "I'm sorry." He stared at those words until his eyes burned. Sorry for what? For getting caught? For the scam? Or was there some small part of her that had actually felt something real? He would never know. He deleted the message, blocked her number, and sat in the fluorescent light of the terminal waiting for a flight that would take him home to a life that would never be the same. Marcus returned to Seattle on a gray Wednesday morning that matched his internal weather perfectly. His brother Daniel picked him up from the airport, and the drive back to his apartment was mostly silent. Daniel had tried to start conversations twice, asking about the trip, but Marcus's monosyllabic responses made it clear he wasn't ready to talk. When they pulled up to his building, Daniel finally spoke what had been hanging between them. "I'm sorry this happened to you." Marcus nodded, grabbing his suitcase from the trunk. "You were right. I was stupid. You weren't stupid. You were hopeful. There's a difference." But Marcus couldn't see the difference. Not then. He went back to work the following Monday, told his coworkers the trip was fine when they asked, and buried himself in code with an intensity that worried his manager. His apartment, which had felt like a prison before Bangkok, now felt appropriate. He deserved this sterile space, these neutral walls, this life of careful isolation. He tried to reach for something more and had his hand bitten off. The lesson seemed clear. 2 weeks after returning, Marcus received an email from the Thai tourist police. They wanted to schedule a video call to discuss his case. He almost deleted it, almost ignored it entirely, but something made him respond. The call was scheduled for the following Thursday at 6 p.m, his time, which was 7 a.m. in Bangkok. The detective who appeared on his screen was a woman in her 40s with short hair and an efficient manner. She introduced herself as Detective Siraporn Watana, part of a special unit that investigated transnational fraud targeting foreign nationals. "Chen, thank you for making time to speak with me. I know this has been a difficult experience for you." Marcus sat at his kitchen table, his laptop open, feeling exposed despite being in his own home. "Have you found anything? We have made significant progress on your case. But first, I need to ask you some questions. I need you to think carefully about your interactions with the woman who called herself Aria. Did she ever mention other foreign men she was talking to?" Marcus thought back through their conversations. "No. She said she'd tried online dating before, but never found anyone she connected with." "Did she ever ask you to keep your relationship private?" Not tell friends or family? He remembered the video calls, the way she'd asked if it was just him in his apartment, if anyone else was around. At the time, he thought it was intimacy. Now, he saw it differently. She wanted our relationship to be between us. She said she was a private person. Detective Suraporn nodded, making notes. And the uncle, Sumchai. Did he pressure you to make quick decision? He said there were other interested buyers, that we needed to move fast. Classic pressure tactic. Create artificial scarcity. Force quick decision before target has time to think or do research. She looked directly at the camera. Mr. Chen, you are not the first victim of this network. You are not even the first this year. Over the next hour, Detective Suraporn laid out the scope of what she'd uncovered. The network had been operating for at least 3 years, targeting men from the United States, Australia, United Kingdom, and Germany primarily. They worked in cells of 3 to 5 people, each playing different roles. The primary romance operator, usually an attractive woman in her late 20s or early 30s. The authority figure, typically playing a family member or business associate. And 1 or 2 supporting characters to add legitimacy, like Ploy, the spa worker who'd vouch for Aria's character. We've connected your case to at least 7 others with similar patterns, Detective Suraporn said. 2 other men are willing to speak with you if you want. Sometimes talking to other victims helps with the processing of what happened. Marcus agreed without really thinking about it. The detective sent him contact information for a man named Andrew from Sydney and another named Klaus from Munich. Both had been scammed by variations of the same network, though their romance operators had different names and the investment schemes varied. Andrew had lost $80,000 on a fake gemstone export business. Klaus had sold his car to invest in a restaurant that never existed. Marcus reached out to Andrew first. They had a video call on a Sunday afternoon, Marcus drinking coffee while Andrew nursed a beer in what looked like his living room half a world away. Andrew was in his early 40s, a divorced accountant who should have known better, as he said multiple times during their conversation. The thing that gets me, Andrew said, is how real it felt. I've been in relationships. I know what connection feels like, and what I had with Lek, or whatever her real name was, that felt real. The way she laughed at my jokes, the way she remembered details about my life. How can someone fake that? Marcus understood exactly what he meant. That was the part that haunted him late at night when he couldn't sleep. Not the money, though $45,000 was devastating, but the feeling that every moment with Aria had been calculated, scripted, performed, that nothing he'd experienced had been genuine. Detective Suraporn told me they're professionals, Marcus said, that they study psychology, learn manipulation techniques. Yeah, she told me that too. Doesn't make it feel less real in my memories though, does it? They talked for 2 hours, sharing details of their respective scams, finding comfort in the commonalities. Both had been love-bombed initially, receiving constant attention and affection. Both had been introduced to supporting characters who validated the romance operator's story. Both had been presented with investment opportunities that required quick decisions. Both had ignored warning signs because they wanted so badly to believe. Klaus, when Marcus spoke with him a few days later, was angrier. He'd been scammed 18 months ago and still couldn't talk about it without his voice rising. They are parasites, Klaus said, his German accent thickening with emotion. They find lonely people and they exploit the loneliness. It's not about money. Money you can earn back. It's about making you doubt your own judgment, your own feelings, your own capacity to know what is real. That resonated with Marcus more than anything else anyone had said. He'd returned from Bangkok unable to trust his own perceptions. When a woman at a coffee shop smiled at him, he assumed she wanted something. When a coworker complimented his work, he looked for ulterior motives. The scam hadn't just taken his money. It had taken his ability to accept human connection at face value. 3 months after Bangkok, Detective Suraporn contacted him again. They'd made arrests. The network had been larger than initially thought, operating across multiple cities in Thailand. She sent him photos of the people they'd detained. One photo showed a woman who looked like Aria but different somehow, harder around the eyes, her hair shorter. The caption read, Natita Suksai, age 29, bachelor's degree in psychology from Chulalongkorn University. Marcus stared at the photo for a long time. So that was her real name, Nathida, not Aria, the gentle teacher who loved quiet moments and dreamed of opening a cafe. Nathida, who had studied human behavior and learned to weaponize it. Detective Suraporn arranged another video call to walk him through the evidence they'd collected. In the raids on various apartments the network used, they'd found extensive documentation. There were handbooks, literal instruction manuals for the scams. One chapter was titled, Building Emotional Dependency. Another was Creating Urgency in Financial Decisions. They'd found spreadsheets tracking multiple targets simultaneously, notes about each person's vulnerabilities, family situations, income levels, and emotional triggers. In Nathita's files, we found your profile, Detective Siraporn said, pulling up a document on screen. It says here, recently ended relationship, close with mother but distant from brother, works in technology sector indicating good income, shows signs of loneliness in social media posts, responds well to validation and physical compliments. Risk-averse personality requires building trust over extent, dead period. Hearing himself reduced to a psychological profile made Marcus feel sick. Every conversation, every video call, every moment he'd thought was spontaneous connection had been calculated strategy. Nathita had known exactly how to make him feel seen because she'd studied him like a research subject. But here is something interesting, the detective continued. We found journal entries from Nathita, personal writings, not part of scam documentation. In one entry from 2 months into your correspondence, she writes about feeling conflicted. She says you are different from other targets, that talking to you has made her question what she is doing. Marcus felt something complicated twist in his chest. So what? I should feel sorry for her. No, I am not saying that. She made choice to continue scam despite these feelings. She took your money. She is criminal, and she will face consequences. But what I want you to understand is that these operations are complex. The people who run them are not monsters. They are human beings who have found a way to profit from other people's loneliness. Sometimes they develop real feelings, or something like real feelings, for their targets. It makes the performance more convincing, but it also complicates their own psychology. Does knowing that help me somehow? Detective Siraporn's expression softened. Maybe not now, but eventually, understanding that Nathita likely did feel some genuine fondness for you might help you trust that your instincts about human connection are not completely broken. You correctly identified that you were connecting with another person. The problem was not your perception. The problem was that the other person was simultaneously running fraud operation. Over the following weeks, the legal process moved forward. Nathita and 4 others in her network were formally charged. Detective Siraporn told Marcus that financial recovery was unlikely. The money had been moved through multiple accounts and converted to assets that were difficult to trace. He might recover a few $1,000s eventually, but he should not hope for more. Marcus tried to move on. He went to therapy, something he should have done years ago according to his therapist, who suggested his vulnerability to the scam was rooted in deeper patterns of isolation and fear of rejection. He started going to a weekly board game night at a cafe near his apartment, forcing himself to interact with people in low-stakes social situations. He deleted all his dating apps and told himself he'd take a year off from trying to find a relationship. But 6 months after Bangkok, sitting alone in his apartment on a Friday night, Marcus found himself looking at Nathita's photo again. He'd saved it to his desktop, though he wasn't sure why. In the detention photo, she looked tired and defeated, nothing like the radiant woman who'd held a welcome sign with hearts drawn in the corners. He wondered what she was thinking in that moment, whether she thought about him at all, whether any of the tears she cried when he transferred the money had been real. His phone buzzed, a message from Daniel asking if he wanted to come over for dinner. His brother had been checking in regularly since Bangkok, their relationship strengthening through Marcus's crisis in a way that years of comfortable distance had never achieved. Marcus put his phone down without responding. Instead, he opened his laptop and navigated to a dating app he'd sworn off. His profile was still there, inactive but not deleted. He could reactivate it with one click. He stared at the button, his cursor hovering. He thought about Aria, or Nathita, or whoever she really was. He thought about the way she'd made him feel seen and valued and possible. He thought about Andrew in Sydney and Klaus in Munich, both still struggling with their own aftermath. He thought about Detective Siraporn's words about his instincts not being completely broken. But mostly, he thought about the fear, the bone-deep terror that if he tried again, if he opened himself to connection again, he would be fooled again. That he'd never be able to trust his own judgment about whether someone's feelings were genuine. That Nathita had taken something from him that could never be returned. He closed the laptop without reactivating his profile. A year after Bangkok, Marcus received a final email from Detective Siraporn. Nathita had been sentenced to 6 years in prison. The others in her network received similar sentences. There was a possibility of a small financial recovery from seized assets, maybe $5,000, though it could take another year to process. The email included a postscript. I want you to know that, in interview, Nathita asked about you specifically. She asked if you were okay. I did not tell her anything as per policy, but I thought you might want to know that she asked. Marcus read that postscript a dozen times. What was he supposed to do with that information? Was it supposed to make him feel better? Worse? Was it another manipulation? Natita performing remorse for the detective's benefit? Or was it evidence of the genuine fondness the detective had mentioned, the complicated reality that scammers were human beings capable of contradictory feelings? He never responded to that email. These days, Marcus lives a life that looks from the outside much like his life before Bangkok. He works, he sees his family, he goes to the board game cafe on Thursdays. But something fundamental has shifted inside him. He's more careful now, more guarded. When he meets new people, there's a wall that wasn't there before, a protective barrier he can't quite lower, no matter how safe someone seems. Last month, a woman at the cafe asked him out for coffee. She was nice, intelligent, seemed genuinely interested in him. He said yes because his therapist had been encouraging him to try. They met at a neutral location, had a pleasant conversation about books and work and the Seattle weather. At the end, she suggested they do it again sometime. He agreed, but when he got home, he found a reason to cancel their second date. Then he blocked her number. His therapist asked him why. Because I couldn't tell if she was real, Marcus said. I kept watching for signs, analyzing her body language, wondering if she was performing interest. And I realized that even if she was completely genuine, I'd never be able to believe it. Natita didn't just take my money. She took my ability to receive affection at face value. That's not permanent, his therapist said. That's trauma, and trauma can heal. But Marcus isn't sure. Sometimes he looks at couples walking together in the park near his apartment, holding hands and laughing, and he feels like he's watching a species he used to belong to but can no longer access. They live in a world where trust is possible, where love doesn't require constant verification, where someone's smile can just be a smile and not a calculated strategy. On quiet nights, Marcus sometimes thinks about writing to Natita, not to forgive her or to ask questions, but just to tell her what she did. Not the financial damage, which is quantifiable and almost beside the point, but the other damage, the way she made him doubt every positive interaction, the way she turned his capacity for hope into a liability, the way she proved that the things he most wanted, connection and intimacy and partnership, could be expertly simulated and sold back to him at devastating cost. But he never writes the letter. What would be the point? She knows what she did. And if she doesn't, if she's convinced herself it was just business and he was just a mark, then no letter from him would change that. Instead, Marcus carries Bangkok with him like a scar, a permanent reminder that some dreams cost more than money. They cost the ability to dream at all. He goes to work and comes home and lives his careful small life, and he tells himself that this is enough, that safety is worth more than possibility, that the absence of pain is its own kind of peace. Some mornings he almost believes it.